Are you working on your author career but struggling to get that first book published? Does the goal of being an author seem too lofty? Or thoughts of having multiple books and making a full-time living are as fantastical as living in Cinderella's castle? Welcome to Discovered Wordsmiths, a podcast where aspiring authors can be heard. Join Stephen Schneider as he finds and talks to authors you may not know, but authors that have gotten their foot on the author career path. Hear what they've done to get there and where they want to go now. Settle back. It's time for a bit of inspiration and advice. Come listen to today's Discovered Wordsmith.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Discovered Wordsmiths. Today I have Diana Knightley. She is a full-time author that writes a historical romance series called Caitlyn and the Highlander. Now you may notice that I don't do full-time authors very often. I started this with my 50th episode and Jay Thorne, and I wanted to have some full-time authors on as a different voice. And Diana is actually the last one, so I guess it took me 17 episodes to get through them all because I was working with new authors. So Diana has some great things to say. It was a really fun talk, and my wife loves her books. So sit back and listen to Diana Knightley. Here we go. Great. All right. Well, Diana, thank you for being on the podcast. It's great to talk to you. I'm glad you could take some time and chat with me today.
Absolutely.
And I know you're in LA. I'm sitting here in Ohio looking at some snow, which some people grimace, but honestly, it was very, very pretty all weekend.
Oh, that's great.
But tell us a little bit more about yourself.
I grew up in Florida, but I live now in Los Angeles. My husband works in the Hollywood industry, and we both work here and live in a tiny house. We joke as close as we can get to the beach. I have 4 children. And I was an artist. I have a master's degree in art. And then I decided to begin writing. I guess it's been, I think I published my first book in 2013.
So it hasn't been forever.
It hasn't been forever. The way I started writing actually was I had the idea for a story, and I started putting it down a little bit, but I didn't think of myself as a writer. It was just an idea I had. And I wrote about 2 or 3 chapters of it, I guess. And then one night I was camping with a friend, and we were sitting around the campfire talking about our, future bucket lists kind of thing. And I told her that I had written a story and I didn't know what to do with it. And she said, "Heck, if you'll write that story, I'll edit it for you." And about 6 months later, I had it on her desk, and she absolutely covered it with red marks because apparently I'd forgotten everything I had ever learned about punctuation. And but it ended up being my first book that I released. It's called Bright, and that was it took about 6 months to get it from that campfire to me publishing it.
And that's actually a pretty good turnaround time.
It is a really good one. I'm actually a crazy fast writer, and my turnaround right now is 3 months.
Wow. That's pretty good. I know some people write a lot less than that, but I question sometimes the quality being less. But on the flip side, I've read some books that, it was a year or so between their last book, and I'm reading this one going, wow, they really didn't need to spend that much time, or they should have spent more. So,
it's what happened with me was, I assumed that it would needed to take longer, but I also get really kind of obsessive and devoted once I'm in a project, and I just commit to it and I just think about it and I write. And then I joined NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, right off the beginning. And so I committed, in one of my first, my second book, I committed to trying to write 50,000 words in 1 month, and did it in 23 days. Now that we're
Wow.
talking junk, it was a story, but it needed, 15 layers of editing, and rewrites and working on it. But that's, I write my first drafts really linearly from start to finish, and I write them fast, and I don't go back and rewrite while I'm in that first draft zone. I'm just telling myself the story, and I just go. And so I get it down really fast. And then once I've got around 50,000 words, obviously I keep going until I have written in my head the end. And then the second process where I read that story and try to make it sound good. That ends up taking, a couple of months. That first reread is, that's like 3 weeks, and my head is in it, and I'm just, I barely talk to anybody. mom's in the middle of her story, so it's kind of interesting. I take off one hat and put on the other, and then I take that off, and then I print the book out, and then I read it out loud, and then that gives me the, like a third layer or fourth layer. And then I pass it to other people, and then I start doing their notes, and then I'm still writing scenes up until the very end. But it's like it feels like it's fast, but it's just intense, I guess, in a way. It's like I condense what might take a lot of people, a longer time, but I condense it.
And I love what you were saying about your process. It sounds similar to what I've developed for mine. I know a lot of others have also, but there's that controversy that goes around, should I edit as I go? Should I do this? And it seems like the most authors I talk to, the ones that have been the most successful, gotten the most stories, books out, just sit down and write and get out that framework, the basic story. And then they do what almost you could say is the professional level of writing and do it during the second read through and clean up and revising and all that.
Absolutely. It's such, it's like when I go back, usually when I read that first draft, I'm like, what is, now I'm in the book I'm writing right now is book 13 of a series. And so, what I used to, when I would write my first drafts, I put, any time I'm stuck on something, I just write 3 or 4 question marks. And then I can go back and search for those points and really go in and work on them. And but now my book has those, because I'm like, what was that person's name? Where were they sitting? What table was this? What restaurant? What year was this? Is it snowing outside? I have little question marks all over this first draft. But it's more important for me to get the story down in that first draft than to worry the details.
And I think a lot of times authors miss that until they've gotten enough experience with several stories, several books. The little things like where people are sitting, they don't come as easily.
Yeah.
And so at what point, because you're trained school wise for art, at what point did you feel like the story and writing was the level that was beyond a beginner, that you felt, the professional level of writing, or if you're even there? But, where did that come at what point? Because I know writing the first draft of the very first book, and you said there was a lot of read and editing. So I assume now on book 13, you're getting less of that because of the experience. So where'd that transition come from for you?
That's a super interesting question, because I think in the first couple of books, there was definitely more confidence than competence. And it's just, I think in a lot of ways, you sort of have to publish the first books and know that maybe the readership is going to be hard to find, but it's the act of putting it out there that spurs some of the growth. I think if you take that first story, I definitely have never published anything that I wasn't incredibly proud of. And so, but it is so fraught with fear that you may be wrong, especially when you're self-publishing. You might be wrong about your own talent, your own worthiness. I cried a lot in that first book, putting that first book out. I was just a neurotic mess. Probably the first 3 books. What I did for myself was, by the time I was done with the edits and read and formatted the book and was ready to put it out into the world, I had already started another book. I would joke with people that I felt that I was relentless, but in some ways that way I was already excited about a new story. So there was no turning back. And it didn't matter to me if some people were like, "Oh, this is a great first start." I was like, yeah, that's true. I'm already on my second book.
That's another common theme I've heard from others also, that you get done with one and it kind of gets released into the wild and you almost forget about it. It's like, I
Yeah,
can't think about that anymore because now I've got this new one that I'm really excited about. And that seems to
absolutely.
be very common.
Yeah, it's protective, for your psyche to, it's like however that one is received, it doesn't matter because I'm plowing ahead. And so I think it's important to do, to treat it like a business and to embrace it and to move through it and just go professionally, is the best way to learn how to do it.
I'm going to jump back just a little bit because we got started talking and what you were saying fired my brain up. Tell us what before you started writing, what were you doing? I know you said you have 4 kids. Were you a stay-at-home mom, or did you do something completely different?
Actually a cartoonist, and
Really?
I was producing cartoons, kind of an editorial cartoon about being a mom. I did that for like 10 years. There was a point in time where I was doing pretty well at that, but um, I was never making any money to help support the family, but I was always relentless in it. And so I think that helped me, but in a lot of ways that business failed, which I think also helped me in this writing process because, sometimes it is good to take a step back from whatever it is you're creating and decide, is this working for me? Is this what I want to do? And it helped me on my path to becoming a writer, which I'm pretty grateful about. Sometimes we need to fail brilliantly. And actually that was something that happened in my writing. This time I started as a young adult writer. I did that for 5 years before I published my first book under Diana Knightley. The writing wasn't going well at that point.
You were publishing some other books under a different pen name?
Yeah, I was. My young adult books were written under HD Knightley, and I'd gotten up to 5, and had been. Oh no, I'm sorry, 6 books when I decided to. And I had some nominal success, but I didn't have. I had a really hard time finding readers, and so changing to Diana Knightley and writing the books. I wrote a series called the Luna series, and then I started Caitlyn and the Highlander. And Caitlyn and the Highlander was my last gasp at the career that I was working on. I set it up. I set my quit date for when I was going to give it up if it didn't work.
I guess, why did you choose young adult to start with? And do you think it failed because it was just the wrong time? It wasn't the right books for you, or a reason for that?
I think for me, I wanted to write. I have 4 kids and my 3 daughters, and I wanted to write. We loved The Fault in Our Stars. I wanted to write books for them. And so, I was really excited about it, but it was very hard for me to find the right audience. Whenever I write, like if I wrote I wrote a 3-part, a trilogy, dystopian trilogy, but it wasn't quite right. Like the answer to my dystopian trilogy was for the heroine to start a farm and to devote her life to peacefulness, which wasn't quite all the rage. And then
Right, right.
I twisted a fairy tale, but the theme was finding love and friendship, and so I always got a little quirky. So it was kind of hard to sell it because I couldn't quite explain to people, what it was about, why they would want to read it.
So we started talking, and I didn't even get to ask about what you are writing. So that kind of leads into this question with that. So it sounds like the books you wrote before, from a step back, 50,000 foot view, almost were leading you to the current style of book you are writing. That
Yeah.
if you had stopped, you wouldn't have written what you have written right now.
That is so true. It was kind of like I'm so grateful for that path.
And like you said, without failing, you wouldn't have discovered that. You had to write and kind of have it lead you almost. Just you had to keep writing.
It's so true. For part of one of the things I've learned from the failures that I've moved through has been that there's often a push from the people trying to support creative artists and writers and stuff, is that we're often told, well, you're happy, right? You're doing what you love. You're writing what you love. What does any of the rest of it matter? For me, after having spent 20 years or more trying to become an artist with the trappings of an audience, or a writer with readers, that's not really what we want. We don't want just to write into the abyss. Nobody creates art without wanting an audience. We all want an audience. Everybody would like to be heard or seen or share a story. So it was kind of over time, I just sort of changed that mindset a little bit. I really said, you know what? I want an audience, and I figured out a way to take it. So the first 6 books I wrote were part of me getting upset and not being able to find readers, but straightening my back and giving me the strength the wisdom to figure it out.
And so your Caitlyn in the Highlander series, did the first book take off right away, or did it take a couple books and a bit of time?
What I did was I circled my wagons and I came up with a plan, and my plan from based on the fall of was to create a series that I wanted to base in a real place. And so I chose my hometown where I grew up, Fernandina Beach, Florida. And I wanted to write time travel where the hero comes forward in time. And I wanted to really center it in this place, because I started thinking about the audiences of the books, The Fault in Our Stars, and other books where people actually take pilgrimages to where the books are placed. I started thinking about the idea of that and so I was kind of thinking more. I started thinking more about what the audience of my story would want out of this story. So I placed it in Scotland. I placed it in Fernandina Beach, Florida. And so this time travel tale became about those places. So what I did was to completely answer your question, was I came up with this idea, And then I wrote the first 3 books. And then I wrote Caitlyn and the Highlander, and I released it, I think on May 18th. No, I'm sorry, like June 15th. I released book 2. I was editing it, and then I released it on like July 10th. And then I was finishing writing book 3 to release in August. And then my quit date for when I was going to give up writing was going to be July 30th. If I couldn't find any readers. And so, but that quick release and the marketing that I did, and it just ended up taking off. And by the time the second book was released, about 3 weeks after the first, I didn't have to quit anymore. So it did sort of take off.
Nice.
And then when I published book 3, I went from book 3, I hadn't written one word, and when I published book 2, I wrote book 3 in like a month and a half.
So you had 9 books written, or 8 books written, almost 9, before things started really taking off for you.
Absolutely. Actually, I had the first 6 young adult books. I had the trilogy of the romance books called Luna's, and before I wrote the first Caitlyn Hunter. So I had 9 books. And at one point, this is just to show you how dim it was here. When I took all the books and gave all the rights to the ebooks to a publishing company that would take the rights to them overseas and sell them worldwide, the ebooks. I signed a 6-month contract with them, and so they were selling the ebooks, and they never sold one single copy. And they finally released me from the contract after like 5 months. So it was, by the time I started Caitlyn and the Highlander, it was definitely to the point where it was looking bleak, but I'm glad it wasn't.
And I know now you've got a pretty good sized fan base. You got some very devoted fans. My wife is one of them. Your 12th book, she's been reading slowly because she doesn't want it to end.
Yeah.
You didn't have the fans, didn't have the sales on the young adult. You got it on this. So, and obviously you've kept the series going. What do people like about it? What are they saying? The reason they want to keep reading it? Because obviously you're the same person. You wrote all those books. What are people saying that this caught them? This is what really hooked them and they love.
I don't know. I feel like it's got all the same kind of qualities. It's just that the package that, I really, instead of thinking about the story that I wanted to write, which has always been the same story, like heavy on, never, true love and like heroes and heroines that are both strong and help each other. And usually my themes include building a family, gathering a quirky cast of characters. Like it's always been the same thing. I think I just really listened to what people wanted. I thought about the idea of building like a long, I love the idea of the odd couple, the hero and the heroine that are come from two different worlds. I often write about that anyways, but with this one, I said, you know what, let's just explore it and make it a marriage, and then just try to make it just work in the middle place between them being the hero and the heroine, whether they can work together and stay true to each other for book after book. And I just think people really, it harkens back to the soap opera in a way that we really, when we really love it. I was often used to think that people didn't want a cliffhanger, that people didn't want more than a trilogy. But then I watched TV. At the time, my husband was working on a show, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's a set dresser, but and I work, like I love Marvel movies. Like just that, to me that was one of the biggest things, that the idea, and Star Wars was, coming back with all these new episodes. I was just like, what I want to do is build a world and then just live in there. Tell a love story that lives in a world, and then I can just long form tell that story. And I think people really like that. They don't want, and then so I think about writing the books as being just another episode of this long form love story. And I think people really love it. Just like people love a soap opera, just like people love, another Star Wars movie. They want more.
Yes, and feedback from my wife totally supports what you were just saying. She loves the characters. She likes the romance and the funny things that happen. That she when she's reading and she chuckles, and then she'll turn to me and tell me, "Listen to this," and that's when I know she really really likes a book. And the lines I know from your book are the terrible arse,
Yeah.
and she loves that. And then the MFN matriarch, she wants that on a T-shirt. So she just
Yeah.
that's the type of thing she really gets into and loves. And everything you said, the characters, with the right setting, and just feel, you know, that it captures her.
Yeah.
So
I feel like like I feel like the wisecracking hero, just super cocky, but also, and there's just so much room to play in there. My favorite movie being Thor Ragnarok. So,
that's a great movie. Yes.
yeah. So,
Well, Diana, I really appreciate you taking so much time to talk to me today. Tell us where we can find you online, and again, what your books are called, and when's the next one come out?
absolutely. I have the two names, HD Knightley for my young adult books. I'm Diana Knightley for my more adult books. I have websites, dianaknightley.com, for instance, but I'm mostly found on Facebook. I'm Diana Knightley, the author. I'm also have a Facebook page called Caitlyn and the Highlander. That's my big page. And then I have a private group called Caitlyn and the Highlander that has about 5,000 members now. And I'm there every day talking to people who are reading the books. And so, that's one way. I promised myself if I don't have to quit writing, I will say thank you. And so that's one of the ways I do it.
Nice. And one last question before we go.
Sure.
Uh, did the success of the Outlander books and TV show affect your choice of what you wanted to write about?
It was one of the series that had what I was basing the idea on as far as the long form love story. Most people who write romance try to end with a happy ending at the end of the books. Outlander didn't worry about that. Outland, and so it is a long form love story. So definitely, it was one of the models. The idea that, but mine takes place in present day. So for the most part, while there, I did like some of the stuff from there, but I definitely like some of the stuff in the Marvel movies too. I actually, when I describe this story, Caitlyn and the Highlander, I call it Bridget Jones meets Outlander mixed up with Thor. So
Nice.
yeah,
Nice. And I think we all do that. Obviously, what we write in our own stories have little bits and pieces from lots of other things, because that's what inspired us. That's what we're used to.
yeah,
And I think making it your own is important. But if you have to think about it and like plan how you're going to make it your own, then maybe it's not the right choice. I would say. And
Yeah,
I think,
true. It's like I mean, when I first conceived of the time travel, the star of my book, I hadn't actually ever seen or heard of Outlander. My biggest model was always Kate and Leopold, the movie.
oh yeah, Hugh Jack.
And so I just loved the idea of historical figures coming forward in time. It was like my big thing. I still haven't watched Outlander. I can't now because, I wouldn't want to, inform.
Right.
So yeah, so it's but it definitely, the fans that love Caitlyn, everybody knows it. I've mentioned Outlander in the books because if I'm going for realism, it's impossible to have a character meeting a man with a kilt on a beach in Florida without having seen Outlander.
Right. Right. And I think you did a great job of taking all the things you're inspired by and making it your own. Obviously, it looks like it's worked out well.
Yeah, it has. It has. It's been great.
Great. Well, Diana, thank you for taking so much time to talk today. I wish you so much luck in the future. I know my wife will be very excited when that next book comes out so she can finish this one.
Oh yeah, and I totally forgot to tell you too that the book 13 is coming out this summer, and I'm writing a prequel that's going to come out in April. So yeah.
Great. I'll pass that along.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to Discovered Wordsmiths. Come back next week and listen to another author discuss the road they've traveled, and maybe, sometime in the near future, it might be you.